many legends in Westeros, but perhaps the North has some of the most compelling and relevant to the main story in the books. After these numerous legends, I've always enjoyed Bael the Bard, and feel it links back into the main books and what is to come in a lot of ways. Bael the Bard was supposedly a king beyond the wall, and one of the greatest wildling raiders of all time, and renowned both beyond the wall and in the North due to his antics. Bael was a singer who wrote many a song about his life, songs that are still sung today north of the wall. According to the legends of the Free Folk beyond the wall, Lord Brandon Stark, the liege lord of the North, once called Bael the Bard a coward. Word somehow reached Bael himself, who vowed to take revenge for this affront and prove his courage. Bael climbed the wall, then took the King's Road to Winterfell, where he entered the ancient castle under the guise of a singer named Sigeric of Skagos. There, he sung until midnight for the Lord of Winterfell. Impressed by his skill as a singer, Lord Stark asked Bael what he would have as a reward, but Bael requested only the most beautiful flower blooming in Winterfell's garden. As the blue winter roses were just in bloom, Brandon Stark presented him with one, and the debt had been paid. But the following morning, the maiden daughter and only child of Lord Stark had disappeared in the night. In her bed was the blue winter rose, given to Bael as a reward. Lord Brandon sent the members of the Night's Watch looking for them beyond the wall, but they never found Bael or the Stark girl. With her being Lord Brandon's only child, the Stark line was on the verge of extinction when one day the girl was back in her room as if nothing had happened, holding in her arms a baby. In truth, they had never actually left Winterfell, staying hidden in the crypts. Bael's bastard with Brandon's daughter became the new Lord Stark on his grandfather's death. 30 years later, Bael was king beyond the wall and led a wildling army south, and he had to fight his own son at the frozen ford. There, incapable of killing his own blood, he let himself be killed by Lord Stark. His son brought back Bael's head to Winterfell, and his mother, who had loved the bard, seeing the trophy, killed herself by leaping from the top of a tower. The son was eventually slain by House Bolton. The legend of Bael the Bard is recalled in the songs of the Free Folk. Ygritte learnt the song from her mother, and Mance Rayder sang it at the Shadow Tower after ranging while he was still a brother of the Night's Watch. Bael is not mentioned in the old chronicles of Winterfell, and although Jon Snow learnt stories from Maester Luwin and Old Nan, he'd never heard of Bael the Bard before Ygritte telling him of the legend. What complicates this tale even further is the vagueness of the time frame and which of the numerous Lord Brandon Starks the legend is about. Lord Brandon's existence itself is unclear as well. Ygritte claims Brandon lived a long time back, as both Brandon and his grandson are given the title Lord instead of King. This seems to indicate that the disappearance of Brandon's daughter took place after the Starks giving up their kingship during Aegon's conquest. Something else that helps narrow the time frame down is that the King's Road is mentioned, implying it took place during or after the reign of Jaehaerys Targaryen, during whose reign the King's Road was built. However, it's also possible that as the world grew and changed, so did the specific details of the tale, being updated and modernized every few generations. But on the other hand, the story states that Bael's son was killed by one of his own lords, who wore his skin afterwards. The habit of flaying an enemy and wearing his skin was practiced by the Boltons, but they are said to have given up the practice 1,000 years ago, well before Aegon's conquest. So why is the tale of Bael the Bard so important to the main book series? Many have pointed out a lot of similarities to the supposed kidnap of Lyanna Stark by Rhaegar Targaryen. That was one of the main causes of Robert's rebellion. There are more similarities than I thought, than a Stark girl being apparently kidnapped. If R plus L equals J is true in the book as it is in the show, then it very much parallels the Stark princess being supposedly kidnapped and then found with a baby. In this case, Lyanna Stark taking the place of the princess, and Eddard Stark, the now Lord of Winterfell. We also have the association of the blue winter rose with Lyanna Stark and the wall, and my favourite part is the idea of Rhaegar being known as a singer and in the past pretending to be a bard in the wine sinks at King's Landing, and also known to write his own music and songs in the ruins of Summerhall. Some speculation I have seen suggests that Bael's son becoming Lord of Winterfell could suggest that perhaps Lyanna's baby, Jon Snow, may himself inherit Winterfell, which is also supported by the will of Robb Stark. If you take anything from the show as an indication of things that may happen in the book, then Jon becoming King in the North also supports this idea. Another more flimsy parallel is the idea of Bael's son kinslaying, although unknowingly. If the ending of the show bears any similarity to what will happen in the book and Jon Snow kills Daenerys, this maybe parallels kinslaying aspect of the tale, with Daenerys being Jon's aunt. We also have the obvious parallel in the book of Bran, Rickon, the Reeds and Orsha hiding in the crypts of Winterfell after faking an escape. This parallels very closely with Bael and the Stark princess hiding for months in the crypts beneath Winterfell. There are some that speculate that Rhaegar and Lyanna actually hid in the crypts of Winterfell too, but after reading up on the idea, I'm still not really sure how the timeline of this would work with what we know as established fact. A lot of the timescales just don't make sense to me with this. If anyone has any more clarity on that for me in the comments, that would be really helpful. So what can we take away from this tale? If there is one thing that George R.R. Martin likes to do, it is foreshadow events using legends, paralleling events in the main book. We see this a lot with legends in A Song of Ice and Fire. Like many legends, they can be interpreted in different ways. For example, within the text in A Storm of Swords, during Jon's first meeting with Mance Rayder, Jon himself points out the similarities of the tale of Bael the Bard and Mance's trip to Winterfell during Robert Baratheon's time there. Arguably, events much later with Mance and the Spearwives sneaking into the Bolton-controlled Winterfell also plays really well with this idea. What this shows to me is how legends in George R.R. Martin's work can be interpreted in many different ways and can foreshadow multiple events in the present and in the past. What this kind of highlights to me is how there can be many different interpretations of legend in A Song of Ice and Fire, and that there doesn't necessarily have to be one correct answer. This is something I want to touch upon in a later video, with the argument as to whether Daenerys or Jon is Azor Ahai, because I think what Bael the Bard kind of highlights is that it's possible to have multiple answers to the same question when it comes to these legends. So here is the big question. Is the legend of Bael the Bard true? Well, it is a legend and impossible to say. It's definitely plausible, and events along those lines could very well have happened at some point. But over time, events have evolved and changed. And if it were true, then I think the real events would have very few specific similarities to the legend, but the outcome would generally be the same. But at the end of the day, what does it matter if the legend is true or not? The events aren't going to influence the current story in the book, and they do their job at fleshing out the lore of the world as well, and proving an interesting way of foreshadowing events to come. So what do you think about the legend of Bael the Bard? Do you think he was real? Do you see the Rhaegar and Lyanna equals Jon Snow parallels? What do you think about the theory of Rhaegar and Lyanna hiding in the crypts of Winterfell? Does the timeline allow it? What did I miss, and what theories do you have about him? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.